Hey everyone, CJ here. So, you have learned how to play Dungeons & Dragons with the How to Play series, and you have learned how to run the game with the How to Dungeon Master series. Now, you are prepped and ready to play. But you have come across a tiny little hitch. There is nobody for you to play with. In this video, we are going to correct that problem. I'm going to give you some tips on finding your D&D group. I know that a good chunk of my viewers are not from America, so don't worry. I'm also going to give some group finding tips for those of you who want to play D&D all around the world. Before I play the intro, I have a small favor to ask all of you. While I can give you tips on how to find a game, I can't point everyone to an exact location. Sometimes finding a game can be difficult no matter where you are. In Singapore, Saudi Arabia, Italy, and even in America if you are living in remote areas. So, to help potential new players find a group, post your favorite place to play D&D in the comment section below after watching the video. It can be a game shop, cafe, bar, university club, or others. Use the template I'm going to pin in the comment section below. Dungeons & Dragons was created by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. It was first published in 1974 in United States of America, so it is no surprise that this is also where you can find the largest player base for D&D. According to FLOURISH'S Dungeon Master Survey, 36% of the correspondents, the majority of people, play D&D at home. The classic scenario of how a group starts is that a bunch of friends decided to play D&D. One of them, who knows the rule more than the others, volunteers to be the Dungeon Master. He or she had learned how to play from their parents, other friends at school, churches, libraries, game shops, or whatever. The point is that D&D used to rely on this infection factor method to spread. Some groups started on their own by buying the basic set back in the 70s or 5th edition starter set these days and just go play it, making mistakes until they get it right. I created the How to Dungeon Master series to give people the confidence to start their own game. But still, nothing beats learning by experience. Get into a few games as a player, if you can. If you like it, you've gained precious experience. Even if you don't, you can still learn from it by running your own game better. Well, better is subjective because people have their own preferences. But still, it gives you valuable perspective and get you in touch with the community so that you can find new players to play with. However, not everybody has friends who know how to play D&D. Even in America, there are people living in remote places where most of the population don't even know anything about D&D, let alone be interested in it. So, to help everyone find their game, I'm going to divide my tips into 3 main sections. Finding games in America and other English-speaking countries, the rest of the world, and starting a game yourself. I group America together with other developed English-speaking countries like UK, Australia, and Canada, and so on, because a lot of these countries have similar game shops, buy the same products, use the same apps and websites, and just do most other things similarly. There are some differences, of course, like in Australia, players have to fight off drop bears before they can get a good playing spot by the billabong. Get away, you deal! Otherwise, the following tips are universal. If you don't have any friends who can teach you how to play D&D, the easiest way to find a game is to go to your FLAGs, friendly local game stores. To be more precise, tabletop board game shops, because video game shops generally don't host D&D game nights, even though there might be exceptions. You have better chance if the game shop sells tabletop RPG rulebooks, board games, Warhammer or other similar miniatures, and collectible card games, especially Magic the Gathering, because Magic and D&D is currently owned by the same company, Wizards of the Coast. The more of these products you see, the better are your chances. Even if they don't host game nights, they might know a group or other shops that does. Some comic book shops that also sell the things I mentioned before also host D&D games. But in my experience, not if it is a specialty shop that strictly sells comic books. You can usually use Google to find these game shops. You can also find private D&D groups online using social media. Facebook is a great place to find D&D groups. Just type in Dungeons and Dragons and a location, and you just might find a local game group, and you can ask them if there is a spot for a new player. Another really useful website is meetup.com. You can use their search function to search for D&D groups near your specified location. You just need to sign up to attend the events hosted by the group. Reddit is also a pretty good place to find games with their LFG or looking for group subreddits. There are more than one though. There's also a Roll20 centric subreddit and most likely others. There are also dedicated group finding websites like Warhorn and Obsidian Portal that are used by more seasoned players and DMs that you can also use. You can search listed games by location too. Obsidian Portal has a map of listed campaign locations, but I wouldn't rely on the stated group location to be too accurate. I don't think dear leader Kim Jong-un is such a massive D&D fan who is hosting all these campaigns in Pyongyang. You can also look around old school sites like EN World, which has its own group finding function, and the forums of other sites like RPG.net, Giant in the Playground, Board Game Geeks, and maybe a few others that I missed. Not all games are played in person. Some of those games you find advertised online are played using apps like Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds. Honestly, I'm not very familiar with the use of those apps, so I have to direct you to other YouTubers to teach you how to use them. Those apps also have group search forums on their official site. Obviously, you will be playing using their respective app. There are also other less commonly used avenues for finding a game. Sometimes you can find a game organized by libraries. Some schools also have board game and tabletop clubs, but of course it would be restricted to students of the school. University clubs, however, might be more open, but membership fee is usually higher for non-students. This might be a bit of a surprise for some of you due to the satanic panic of the 80s, but now some churches are actually hosting D&D games. I guess the stigma has worn off, and D&D is seen as what it is, a harmless, rewarding hobby, which is good news. For the rest of the world, you can pretty much use similar methods, but there are complications and it may take a little more work on your part. If you're a local, you may have an easier time finding game stores and games because you know the local language. In developed countries like Germany, many parts of Europe, and Japan, there would be a tabletop RPG following. They even have their own locally developed RPGs. Germany has The Dark Eye, Sweden has Tales from the Loop, Japan has Sword World, and more. But D&D is still a powerful brand the world over. Game shops should be quite abundant in these countries. In Japan, for example, if you want to find tabletop RPGs and playing space, you can go to the Yellow Submarine RPG stores. There is one in Akihabara. There should be more in other prefectures. For other parts of the world, like Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam, Dubai, United Arab Emirates, and Tehran, Iran, board game cafes are more popular and common than game shops. The board game renaissance has spread to the rest of the world, but tabletop RPGs might not have spread as widely. You may find some tabletop RPG players there, or at least people who are open to the idea to try the game. I know for a fact though that there are tabletop RPG players in Saudi Arabia, Korea, Philippines, Russia, and many other places. Finding game shops and board game cafes may be harder if you don't know the local language, because shop names may not be translated to English, and Google may not be used there. China, for example, has banned Google and Facebook for years, and have their own search engine and social network. China's most popular search engine is Baidu, and their most popular social network app is WeChat. In Russia, VK is one of, if not the most popular social networking site in the country. There is even an Adventurers League group there. So the point is, consider using local social network apps in your search. The same goes for forums and websites. Meetup.com is usually very useful all over the world. But if the websites I previously mentioned doesn't work there, use a local one. Also, keep in mind that tabletop RPGs may be called something else in different countries. In Japan, for example, tabletop RPG is actually called Tabletop RPG. I think this is a Wasei Eigo, Japanese-made English. They might have mistook the tabletop part as tabletop, because it made much more sense, don't you think? You sit around a table and talk. Conversely, it would be problematic if everyone is standing on top of the table while playing. Then again, even if you can't find any games in person, you can still play online using Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds. You may not even have to speak English because Roll20 have language search function if you click on the advanced search options. The number of language is limited though. I don't know enough about other language options in Fantasy Grounds, so please comment if you know anything about it. Other ways of finding a game is to try school and university clubs. Or if you are an expat working overseas, try asking people in your expat community or other people in your base if you are a soldier stationed there. By the way, if you are a native in the country, please don't harass expats for a game of D&D. Just because they are from overseas, it doesn't mean that they do all the overseas stuff. They may never even have played the game ever before. Don't use them for free English practice either, it's rude. Before I move on, let me repeat the favor I ask you all. Finding a game can sometimes be difficult no matter where you are. In Taiwan, India, Poland, even in America, if you are living in remote areas. So, to help potential new players out there, post your favorite place to play D&D in the comment section below. Of course, when all else fail and you can't find a game, you could start one yourself. Usually, the best way of doing this is to get a bunch of people you are already friends with and ask them to humor you for a bit by trying out this crazy game called Dungeons & Dragons. However, there are occasions when your current group of friends are not the best candidate for players. Sometimes they are just not interested in tabletop RPGs, no matter how much you expose them to your favorite media like Critical Role or Acquisitions Incorporated. Or sometimes your friends just don't take you seriously enough to respect your authority as Dungeon Master. It happens. They love you, but not necessarily respect you. So, for various other reasons too, you may want to look for other players to add to your existing circle of friends. A really important thing you should do before starting your first game is to properly explain the role of the DM and the players, what they can do within the limitations of the rules, and everything the DMs can. If you are running a long-term campaign, it is worth doing a Session 0. Session 0 is a session dedicated to establishing the direction of the campaign and managing expectations. This is not an exhaustive rule, but there are a few general things that you should establish before getting people to commit to play in your long-term campaign. Otherwise, they may feel cheated when they discover that the campaign turned out to be something completely different to what they had signed up for. The first thing you need to establish is the rules. Discuss which edition's rules you are using, any existing rules you are modifying and banning, homebrew rules you are adding or allowing your players to bring to the table, character creation rules, and others. Then, you need to talk about the campaign's direction. Tell them the outline of the campaign. Is it going to be high story, political intrigue, horror, or whatever? The tone, whether it is a mature or PG game with some cursing. Hash out session schedule. How often do the players level up and the maximum level before the end of the campaign so that they can plan their character's build and multi-class? The most important thing though is player behavior. Discuss what sort of language and behavior are going to be tolerated or not tolerated in the game. Discuss whether backstabbing or stealing is allowed. I don't want to restrict anyone's playstyle, but generally, treachery is the biggest group breaker. In Dante's Inferno, traitors occupy the 4th ring of the 9th circle of hell. And in most cases, rooting out saboteurs before facing other enemies is the optimal strategy. So campaigns naturally grind to a halt or just end when there is infighting. Usually, players also create their characters together at Session 0. This is good for bouncing off ideas on what sort of role they will take and establish character relationship. So Session 0 is where you establish your social contract between everybody. Of course, situations can change, so be prepared to renegotiate the term of your relationship. When running a campaign, sometimes players drop out. Don't worry, it's very common. It is not because you're a bad DM or anything. Most of the time, it is just because life and responsibilities take precedence. Schedule conflict is the biggest career ender for players. And with most games running between 3 to 4 hours, it is not a surprise due to the time commitment involved. Sometimes it takes a while until you form a stable group. It could even take months. It is also why you should be part of the community so that you can get new players. Plan around public holidays and exams if you are playing with younger players. They may not be available during those periods. Sometimes as a DM, you may expect a bit more from your group. You might want them to be better role players or better strategic thinkers, but those are skills that need to be developed. New players usually want to push the limits and see what they can get away with by trying everything. This is the equivalent of pressing every button combinations when you play a new video game. They will jump into lava, stab each other's back, and roll their dice for everything. So don't expect them to be able to roleplay through your story-heavy campaign for their first campaign ever. It may even take a couple of campaigns or even years for them to develop their skills. You should also exchange constructive feedback to make growth possible. Group chemistry is also a factor. It can be developed, but not always. Some people are just diametrically opposed in every way, but don't give up on your group too easily. The same goes for players. Not every dungeon masters are Christopher Perkins or Matthew Mercer. Give your DM the room to grow. Despite the authority given to DMs, D&D is a collaborative experience. It is everybody's responsibility to entertain everybody else around the table. "This is what my character would have done" is never an excuse. Why in the world are you creating a character that's despised by everyone? Alright, that's it for the video. This is the end of the How to Dungeon Master series. If you have watched the whole series, then congratulations, you have graduated from the CJ Special Course. Time for celebration! Woohoo! Good job, you! But this series is just a stepping stone for you to get things started. Dungeon mastering is an art, and there is no limit how you can improve and flourish your dungeon mastering skills. Watch more videos, run more games, just keep growing. Before I go, let me thank my Patreon supporters for sticking with me and help me make this series possible. Your support have helped to create a new group of gamers all around the world and tremendously helped the hobby grow. If you like this video, feel free to thumb it up. If you haven't subscribed, please do so and join the notification squad. In case you're wondering, don't worry, I'm not going to stop making D&D videos and there is more to come. CJ, over and out.